Hello everyone to today's live webinar from MyPV. I am David Himmelfreund-Pointner. We're sitting here in Upper Austria and I have somebody brought today from the technical side. Can you maybe introduce yourself, Bernhard, please?
Sure. Thank you very much, David. I'm Bernhard Rimpler. I'm the head of the software engineering department here at MyPV. And today, I'm happy to show you or provide you with some of the new solutions that we came up with in the past month.
Exactly. Thanks, Bernhard. So what is it about today? It's a special webinar, so that it's not like the usual things. It's more special to like the dynamic tariff optimizer, which is a pretty new thing here for us. So what we are doing now, we're not using only surplus energy, which usually would go to the grid from the PV system. We're also using like the normal grid and the dynamic tariffs. And what we have here built is like an optimization to have an optimal timing when we are using this electricity for heating, for hot water, or also for room heating. Yeah, don't mind when you do not understand everything at the first time, because I guess it's quite a complex topic when you hear it the first time, but we see this change to dynamical tariffs as a process. So never mind, it's when it's the first time you hear it. We want to start to talk a little bit about the company. Then we will talk a little bit about media reports, why there has been some criticism on dynamical tariffs, especially on the pricing, because one thing is clear: when you have a dynamic tariff system for your electricity, then sometimes electricity is expensive. And this is exactly also what we had a closer look, especially Bernhard really tried to get very deep and very broad information on this topic, if it's worth to change from dynamical, from fixed tariffs to dynamical tariffs. Is it risky? Is it worth the change? And how big is the potential actually to save money and do a good thing for the grid? Because it's so that when you are using these dynamical tariffs right, so when the price is cheap, then you are also supporting the grid stabilization. That is actually what it's all about. After the price discussion, we will go on and Bernhard will show us how actually this MyPV DTO solution works in principles, and then he will also show us how to configure this in the MyPV cloud online, which probably you already know. And then we will go on to the heater, which is actually the newest product from us. And this is specially designed for using MyPV DTO, using dynamic tariffs from the electricity grid, also without an own PV system. So MyPV is doing warm water and room heating actually since 12 years now. We started with DC products and then we went on with AC products, and there is only used the surplus, which usually goes to the grid. We are an Austrian company. Here on the left side, you can see our full electric company building, and here is actually the philosophy we are always talking about, pretty good, I would say, used. Here are also some special videos on YouTube when you're more interested in this building. Here on the right side, you see our production building, which was necessary to deliver the big demand we are getting the last years in this topic. So what is our topic? Before we go into the topic with Bernhard and DTO, what we are doing since years now is to tell the people that PV electricity is not only sensibly used here in classical electrical systems or cars. It's also sensible to use it for warm water or for room heating. And this is exactly what we are doing with our products. Yeah, here you can see an overview of a normal four-person household. And as you can see, when it is an old building, then a lot of energy is used for the space heating. So for the normal heating of the building, when you look at these newer buildings here or these refurbished buildings, then you can see this, that space heating is also taking not that much energy. And then not only like warm water is interesting for heating with electricity, also space heating is quite interesting. Yeah, and when we talk about dynamical tariffs, it's all about timing and like getting better and using the electricity to the right time, especially the big energy consumption parts or sections like hot water, electrical vehicles, of course, electricity for sure, and also space heatings when the building is like a good one. Here you can see our product portfolio, which is compatible with the DTO system. So not only the new products like the THOR, we will come back to later, also the existing products like the AC-THOR, the AC-THOR 9S, the AC-ELVA2, and the SOLTOR is compatible with this MyPV DTO. And before Bernhard will start, here just a little overview of our products. Here our DC products, they work off grid, and here our AC products with which are usually using just the surplus from the PV system. And now actually I have quite a big improvement with the MyPV DTO. Yeah, and why? Like the news has been quite critical sometimes, and how we are really making it with the timing of the cheapest times of electricity. Bernhard, please, can you go into details with us in this topic?
Sure. Thank you very much for providing the introduction into this topic. First of all, I want to say that I'm sorry I've caught a bit of a cold. So this is not my usual voice, but I'm trying to do my best here. But without further ado, the first thing that I would like to start with is, and now this is like the prices for Germany, but I would like to explain how the prices of electricity now in Germany, like please remind yourself, this is like depending on the country, this can vary a lot, but we have brought up here like the price, like how the price is actually put together for Germany, and to give you an idea of which parts we are now able to optimize. So as you can see here, there is like 3 bars. And the one that we can optimize here is the orange one. So this is currently the one that when we are speaking of optimization in terms of dynamic tariffs, we are speaking of this bar only, because there is net tariffs, for example, and other fees like taxes and other stuff that is being added on top of this. I will remind later on again when we come to this topic. I've also brought one chart that, and the first chart is only true for households. And again, this is the chart for Germany. And for the industry, as you can see, there is a whole lot more optimization potential in those terms, because a bigger share of the total price is made out of the electricity price itself, and not like the fees for the grid and taxes and so on. And before we actually start having a look at the price configurations themselves, I would like to give you a brief overview over what the electricity exchange itself is and the most important parts that we need. So first of all, and I don't want to get into much details here, the only thing that is very good to know here is that prices are made on the day-ahead market. So this pretty much means that the day before, and we will also see this in the live examples, the day before I already know the prices for tomorrow. So this, of course, leaves me with a lot of optimization potential, because I can plan ahead, so to say. I can plan one day ahead. This is one of the main points here. In the next one, I've brought some extreme values from specific days. On the first chart, you can see like the hour at the very bottom. So it's going from 0 to hour 23 in Germany again. So this is a German electricity price chart from the 14th of July last year, 2024. And as you can see, it has gotten like extremely high negative values during midday. So this basically means there was a lot of surplus energy in the grid. So basically the sun was shining a whole lot in Germany and they had a lot of surplus energy. And this led to extreme negative prices during lunchtime, pretty much. And I've brought another chart with me. So this is the from December last year. So this was the 12th of December. And as you can see, prices have risen enormously, like up to 93 cents per kilowatt hour. So this is a whole lot. And you can also see like a fixed line here on the top, on the left bar, and on the bottom of the right chart. And this shows you the price of the average fixed tariff. If I go back to this chart here, this would be like this value for 2024, so the 17 cents. So this is the one that we will be working with when doing the analysis now. So of course the question arises, like, is this then useful? Like, can we somehow measure if like most of the time it will be more expensive than the fixed one, or most of the times it will be cheaper than the fixed one? And this brings me to the next chart, because here we have done like the arithmetical average of the price of each hour for a certain period. So for example, from March 2024 to September 2024, so pretty much summertime, we have had an average electricity price at 12 o'clock of 1.96 cents, for example. So this is the left chart that you can see here. And again, you see like the dotted line at the top, which is the fixed tariff, like the average fixed tariff. So as you can see, during summertime, it's usually way below. And especially taking into consideration what David has shown us before, like if you put big consumers of electricity, like heating water, like heating in general, electric cars, into those periods, of course, your potential of saving money is quite a lot here. And I've also done this analysis for the winter. And again, I want to remind yourself, this is for Germany, but I will show you how you can do this for your country as well in just a second. And so basically we can also see the winter here. And in the news that David has shown before, there were a lot of articles basically saying, no, it's way too expensive. You can pay 90 cents at some point. However, on average, from September until March 2025, so this winter, you can see that during lunchtime, for example, again, we have been below 10 cents. And even at the very most expensive hours at 17 o'clock, we have even been below the fixed tariff. So my opinion here would be it does make sense, especially with the optimization potential of putting big energy consumers into those cheap hours. And I think you can already assume where our solution is going that I'm going to present you in just a minute. But first of all, I'd like to point something out that we've created on our website. You can find this in applications and then under MyPV DTO. And this average calculation that you have seen on this chart, this you can do yourself here. You can put like a starting date, an end date, and the country. So basically the prices you want to draw the bidding zone from. So for example, you can put Germany, Austria, France, Spain, whatever. So you can check it out and do the average calculation for yourself, so you get a better feeling of if this actually would make sense for you or not. The next chart that I want to show you is another calculation that we have done. And this shows the average of the highest three prices. So the most expensive prices each day and then summarized per month. So this is the average of, if I take the highest prices each day for a month, this would, for example, be the value for January 2024. You get the idea here. Again, you have the fixed tariff here. And it's even funny to see that a lot of the times, even at the most expensive, so this would be like a negative optimization. So you would rarely ever achieve this, because I'd like to remind here that even if you, for example, do a lot of the cooking and stuff at 16 and 17 o'clock, you would have still been below the fixed tariff during winter time. So maybe just as a quick reminder here. And of course, we have also done the same analysis for the average price. So this is pretty much just the average for each month, January, February, March, and so on until now. And we've also done it, and this just to show you the optimization potential that we are talking here, we've also done this with the cheapest 3 hours each day. And this is pretty much the chart that we would see with the product that I will show you in just a second. Exactly, this brings me to our product that we are now going to present. So pretty much what it does is, and I'm going to explain this to you by again going to our website. I will have to share my screen therefore. I hope you can see my screen. I hope it's working fine. And without going into too much details, again, you can in detail then check it out on our website yourselves. But what we do here is, as David stated before, we use the surplus energy from our PV system at home. Let's assume we have a normal household with a 10 kilowatt peak PV system, and today in Austria, for example, I don't know where you guys are all from. However, in Austria today would have been a sunny day, which means that with a 10 kilowatt peak PV system, we would have had like roughly the following PV surplus chart, which means that the warm water for, let's say, 2 people, or let's make it 3 people, for example, could have been done from the PV surplus only. But let's assume we didn't have a sunny day today, but rather a very rainy day. And now you can already guess what is happening. Because now all of a sudden, the PV surplus is not enough to make our heating water. So what do? You also see here the electricity prices for today. Again, for Germany, you can pick also different countries here. Let's assume Spain, for example, you can pick Spain. And then what we do is we pick the cheapest hours to draw from the grid, because we know there is still some energy left that we need to provide into our heating system in order to make the heating water. And again, if I switch to the sunny day, for example, the surplus is enough. So we don't draw any energy from the grid. And if it's a winter day, so even less PV power surplus, we have to draw a whole lot of energy from the grid. And we do this at the cheapest times. So this is just to give an indication of what our of what our software is now doing. And of course, you can also choose, for example, with the THOR, so the new product that we just launched, you can also use it without the PV system, and then you simply draw energy from the grid at the cheapest times. So this is pretty much what this system is doing. But as David also said, you can still use this software with any IoT device that we have so far built, and then have like this calculation available. So, of course, this raises, like, currently you have seen this on the website, like with the perfect calculation. Like we have the surplus curve and so on. However, you somehow need to know this beforehand, right? You just can't like do this afterwards. So I need to know it beforehand whether to draw energy from the grid or not. So, and this raises the main question here. So can the water be heated to the target temperature using PV surplus tomorrow? And as you know, we have the prices for tomorrow. I've already shown you this. So the day before we get the prices already for tomorrow. And then we need like some required data also in order to make this forecast model. So what we do is we forecast your PV surplus tomorrow and then make a decision for tomorrow whether at some point we need to draw energy from the grid or we don't. So this is the big question here. And in order to be able to calculate this, you can probably already guess some of the points here. We would need some PV system details, for example. So I need to know how big is your PV system. I need to know like where it is located, because we need the weather data to check, is it sunny, is it raining, and so on. And so we need some PV systems details. You will also see this in the live configuration that we will do together. I would also need to know like how big the household is and the daily consumption. Like this is all values that flow into this calculation to basically make an optimal decision for you. Of course, the electricity price zone we need, like I need to know like, okay, but like on which market are you drawing the prices from? I need to know how much power in total the heating elements have. And then optional, some boiler SOC or SOC. So this is standing for state of charge. I will also explain this one in just a minute. And the battery size. And there is also another mode called cent price, for example. So this one only activates the product if the price falls below a certain threshold. But yeah. Also on the slides, which we will share. So this webinar will also be uploaded, so you can recheck the slides. Here we have, I'm not gonna go into details now because we're gonna go through the configuration in a live example. But you can see here an overview over the modes that we pretty much provide here, with and without PV systems, and all the details that is needed in order to make the configuration work. And now with the next step, I would like to share my screen again and switch to our MyPV Cloud. Perfect. So to some of you, maybe some of you own MyPV products, maybe the cloud you're familiar with, but this is pretty much a web dashboard where you can see some operating data of your systems. Let me start with this one here. And pretty much you connect your device that you have to the cloud, and then you're able to configure the MyPV DTO. And in there, you will be asked some questions. Some of them I've already mentioned before. For example, do you have a PV system? In this case, yes, we have a PV system. We also have a battery storage, and we also need to provide the kilowatt hours, because also we will take this into our final calculation. Then, now again, this SOC. I will explain this in just a minute. For now, we're gonna choose this. However, I'd like to mention already that at least 2 temperature sensors are needed in order to make this work. I will explain to you in just a second why this is. We need to put how many people in the household, the electricity bidding zone. I need to put the total power of elements in kilowatts. And for the calculation of the savings that I can actually do, I need to provide the previous fixed tariff, like what I was paying previously for the fixed tariff. So in the next one, we have to do the PV system configuration. So I have to enter the address. I have to enter the total kilowatt hours, the kilowatt hours peak, the inclination, and the azimuth. You can find like also above these eyes, like some hints on how to configure this. Yeah, pretty much this is what you can do. And then you have this SOC calculation. And what we do here is, by providing your boiler size of your heat water storage and the height of it, and when it's like 0, like when the water is like not warm, it's usually below 38 degrees, because then water feels cold during a shower. And here you can see your connected temperature sensors. And by providing the height, here you can like move these bars. By providing the height on which these temperature sensors are installed, we are then able to make a calculation of how many kilowatt hours is needed in the boiler to reach the target temperature. So for example, you didn't use a whole lot of heating water yesterday because you have been outside all day or whatever, then the calculation will be lower, and it will be taken into tomorrow's forecast. Like when there is not a lot of energy needed for tomorrow due to this calculation, then we will draw less from the grid, for example, in case it's a rainy day. So this is by far the most accurate calculation that you can do, and you need at least 2 temperature sensors. Of course, the more you have, the more accurate it will be. I want to mention this at this point. And yeah, now we have configured this, and you can see currently nothing. And this is absolutely fine. Why? Because the PV forecast, which you can see at the bottom here, actually forecasted that, yeah, okay, the PV power or the surplus that we will generate today will be more than enough. And it's actually pretty accurate for today. I'm a little bit proud here. And yeah, so basically the forecast said that today you will be easily able to make this basically using your PV surplus energy. And here you can see when the device was running and stuff. And now let's configure, let's change one thing here, because I'm gonna change the kilowatt peak of this PV system from 10 to 1. So let's say, let's make a very small PV system. What would have happened then? I mean, now the water is already warm. Maybe we, it's warm. Okay, let me reconfigure, 1 second. Let me put this to 0.1. Those live examples. Oops. So, yeah, okay. We can only do full steps here. But the idea here would be that then, for example, you see some, or we can switch the systems. We can switch to a system that doesn't have a PV system installed. For example, this one. So I now switched it. And this one is running in the configuration without the PV system. No, I don't have a PV system. So in this case, we optimize simply by the grid prices. And the grid prices were at its lowest today at 13 to 14 o'clock and from 14 to 15 o'clock. And this is exactly when the device was running. Yeah. And as you've also seen before, in case you don't have 2 temperature sensors installed, you can also make this based on the number of people in the household, for example. Then we will put a fixed 8.5 kilowatt hours into your heat water storage in this case, because I'm not able to calculate it, therefore I have to guess it, and this is what we can do. And you can also choose the price threshold, for example, so then it would only run below a certain threshold. But of course, when you pick the threshold, for example, and the threshold is never, like the prices are never lower than the threshold for 3 continuous days, then of course the product would not run. Like this is maybe something to remind you, yeah, when configuring this. Okay, I will stop sharing here. And again, you can see like the overview here in case you want to check it. Maybe to summarize here, 2 of the modes, the boiler, state of charge, and the number of people in household, they heat to the target temperature each day, either via boiler calculation or via the estimated amount of heating water needed by providing the people household. And the third mode is the price threshold. This, for example, would be very beneficial in case you have like another heating system and you know the cost of this heating system, so you can calculate yourself, okay, below this threshold it makes sense to draw electricity from the grid, and above it doesn't. So this is something that you could configure. And this is pretty much it from my side. So I would switch back to or hand over to you, David.
Thank you very much, Bernhard, for taking over the technical, more complicated part of this webinar. Actually, we are slowly coming to the end, so we have plenty of time left also for questions if there is anything from you. Okay, what you can see here is, as seen before, all the products which are compatible with this system. So no matter what products of them you pick, you will be able to use the MyPV DTO. Now maybe some words to the heater. This is, as we said, a product which is specially made for the DTO or also for other kind of like Luxon systems, for example, or some kind of energy management systems. And this heater will be able in 2 different variants, like in a small 3.5 kilowatt and in the 9 kilowatt variant. So we see this here, this switch, when you want to see it as a switch, like as a process. It really depends in which land you are situated or you are living, because like in Germany, there are not really a lot of smart meters installed already, and the smart meter is actually what you need to be able to use a dynamic tariff. In Austria, we have a lot of smart meters, so almost anybody is able to switch to such tariffs. So it really depends where you are at home. And yeah, we are compatible with, I think, like 13 different countries. What I know, there are quite some. When you want, you can also like type in the chat, where are you from? This would be quite interesting for us, just to see where you guys are from. So we have plenty of time. Maybe we can take a quick overview about the topic. Maybe you can help me in some parts, Bernhard. I will try to start my own. So we are just trying to make the switch like to renewable energies, and of course PV systems are very helpful here. And when you use these dynamical tariff systems, in the end you are also using PV electricity, because the prices are low because there is so much PV electricity in the grid. So what you can remember is it is a good thing for the grid, and also like for society, and for like us people and
yeah, yeah, exactly. So maybe in case of this question is somehow raised, that like, okay, now you're like making products available without having a PV system installed, but as David just perfectly like summarized, I want to switch back here for a second to this chart, which perfectly describes to you that like during summertime, you have the lowest prices at 11 and 12 o'clock. So this is midday, basically meaning there is a lot of surplus PV energy in the grid, and this makes prices low because it's pretty much just a supply and demand thing. And even during winter time, you can see then the lowest prices at 1 or 2 in the morning. So like very early in the morning. And this is usually wind energy that is not being used. So we as a company, we want to make renewable energy available to almost everybody. So this is like one of the things here also that I think we can summarize here because I mean, there are a lot of people out there that maybe they are not allowed to build a PV system to do some regulatories, or they cannot, or they are living in a flat or stuff like this. So there is also a lot of reasons that can be like, so somebody can't build a PV system, but somehow we want to make this energy that is already being provided by PV systems available to everybody. So this is something maybe I also want to mention here.
Yes, thanks. So at the moment we are only like optimizing this part here. Is it correct, Bernhard? Because only this part here is like dynamic, but maybe in the future it could be that also like the grid itself can get dynamic. So then this part which will be dynamic is even more relevant, even more interesting to optimize, as we can see here, for example, on industrial systems.
Yeah, correct. Maybe to, in case somebody misunderstood this, so the prices that I was showing beforehand, like those ones, this will only be the orange part of this chart that we see here. So to these prices, you would still have to calculate. Now for Germany, again, this is different for each country. You would have to calculate in addition the grid tariffs and other taxes and other stuff. So and you might ask yourselves, okay, why didn't you put this here? I mean, we could, but however, this is very different for each region in Germany. So we have like big differences here, depending on the region in Germany where you are. So there is, this is just averages. And we wanted to show you like the optimization potential of this orange bar. And as David also mentioned, in Germany, again, this is like, we can't generalize here. This is depending on the country where you live in, but they are also speaking about making these grid fees, so the middle bar, basically dynamic. So what this means is if you pull energy from the grid at high demand times, like at 17, 18 o'clock when everybody is at home cooking, and then you decide to make your heating water, you decide to activate the dishwasher and stuff like this, if you don't behave in a way that like benefits the grid, it will get a little bit more expensive. However, if you switch your behavior, and for example with the heating water, as you have shown it to you with our systems, you can even automate this, so you don't even have to do anything here. We're able to even make bigger savings here, because all of a sudden we're talking of almost 2/3 of the total price that we can optimize. And this is very interesting for households, and of course, as you also see here, very interesting for the industry.
Thanks. So we feel like quite a bit responsible also to tell our customers more like we have new products. We also want to like give a little overview about this topic in general, why it makes sense, and is it like dangerous? Can it be like an extreme cost factor, or how big is the potential? As we have seen here, for example, this is the worst case scenario. And for example, here the green thing is the best case scenario. This is what we are trying to do here.
However, like the top curve is rarely reachable. Like if again, if you look like here, even if you start cooking at 16 and 17 o'clock, you would even be below the fixed tariff here. So this is maybe some takeaway here. And
yes, I think like worst case is not even a good word for it. I think it's more like a negative optimization, right? Really, you're picking the most expensive hours of the day.
Yeah,
correct. Yes.
Yeah, and this is like unachievable. Like you
Okay.
you won't be able to follow this curve.
Yeah.
But of course, the bottom one we can. Like the bottom one, as I've explained before, we calculate the cheapest hours each day. So the bottom one we can follow. So the bottom one would be what our product is doing.
Okay. Maybe we can then have a small look to the chat.
Where do you get the DTO data from? You probably mean the prices and how reliable are the presented prices. So pretty much we get it from the exchanges themselves. So basically this is public data. So there is a lot of sources where you can get like this data from. We get it from the exchanges, the electricity price exchanges themselves. So and it should be pretty reliable. Like we didn't have any problems so far not getting the data or anything, like very rarely. So this is usually working fine. We also have another question regarding gas heating. Let me just read through here for a second. So if I understand you correctly, what you could do is you have like these opportunity prices that I've mentioned before. So you have like a certain gas price, and what you can do is like, for example, set the threshold. So you can like, you would have to calculate this yourself somehow, but then you can set like the price threshold. And let's say during summertime at, what was it here at, for example, in July last year in Germany, you had an average of a little bit above 2.5 cents, so very low. So probably you can switch to electrical heating then. So if this is somehow answering your question. Can the DTO steering be integrated via Home Assistant? So we have a compatibility via Home Assistant. You can find also some Git repositories regarding this. However, the DTO yet, this is not implemented yet. So therefore, you would have to use our MyPV Cloud. However, as of now, simply by purchasing a MyPV product, an IoT MyPV product, so it's not working with the very old products, but with every product that is like an IoT device of MyPV, you can also have access immediately to a MyPV Cloud and then activate the DTO. So this would be simply available there. I'm gonna share my screen maybe here for just a second in case something is unclear. So what you can do is you can add, in case you have not configured this yet, and I think this is your question, you can go to add more widgets and then you will find it at the bottom. And you can simply drag it to the top, like I'm gonna do this with the grid now. Then you have it here and then you press save and then you have your widget wherever you want it to appear. And then you can also configure it. So if this is answering your question, and there might be a software update needed for this. So we also need to depending on when you purchased our device, what you would need to do, but it will also show you here, like in case a software update on the product is needed, we would show it to you here in the cloud, and then you simply can go to the settings, device setup, and basically update it here under the firmware version. So this one you could do. And then it should work just fine.
Okay. So thanks everybody. Thank you very much for being with us. I think this was it. Feel free to like contact us for any more questions. Otherwise, we wish a beautiful evening and see you next time maybe.
Yeah, thank you also from my side and have a nice evening or day wherever you are from. Yeah.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye bye. See you. Thank you.
Empowering the solar future.